Welcome to the discussion on leadership. This is one of the most important topics as far as organizational behavior is concerned, because leadership defines maybe the entire functioning of the organization. The type of leader, the way he or she functions, and the situations that the person is in, how that person motivates the followers, and what much degree of autonomy does he allow to the followers. Many things define the functions of the organization, and leadership is one of the important domains which define the functions in the organization. So here in this discussion we will try to find out like what is leadership, how leadership differs from management, what are the different leadership functions, what are the characteristics of a leader, and we will see the different approaches to the study of leadership, like power influence approach, behavior approach, in which we will try to concentrate on different behavior approaches like Likert systems or styles of leadership, participative leadership, the managerial grid by Blake and Morton, Redin's 3D leadership model, 6 emotional leadership styles by Goldman. We will try to focus on the trait approach, under it the charismatic leadership, situational approach like Tannenbaum and Smith continuum, the contingency leadership model, the path goal model, Hershey Blanchard situational leadership theory, leader member exchange approach, Room Yago leadership model, transactional and transformational leadership, attribution theory of leadership, authentic leaders and ethical behavior, trust, which is the foundation of leadership, contemporary leadership roles, online leadership, multicultural leadership, leadership approaches in developing countries, substitutes for leadership. So this discussion is a much detailed discussion about leadership qualities, the different types of leadership, how it functions in the organization, and how it differs according to the cultures, and what is the influence of cultures on leadership behavior, and most importantly, like can we think of a substitute of leadership, in what cases can we think of it, and in what cases we cannot think of substitutes for leadership. So this discussion will span through 3 lecture sessions. Today we will try to focus on the definition of leadership and how leadership is differentiated from like who is the leader and who is the manager. We need to know like what are the points of difference, and maybe where one is overlapping with the other, and what are the good qualities of a leader. We will try to focus on the trait approach of leadership and some of the behavioral theories of leadership. So to start off with, we are to discuss what is leadership. So leadership is defined as the process of influencing others to facilitate the attainment of organizationally relevant goals. So if you can see this definition, it is the process of influencing others. Why we try to influence others is to facilitate the goal reaching by the organization. So there is some set goals for the organization, and someone has to drive the employees, someone has to be influencing, motivating the employees, inspiring the employees to reach the goal and set examples by performing, by behaving, by demonstrating in such a way like the people get inspired, motivated to reach the goal. So that is the function of that is what leadership means. It is the way of influencing people, the process of influencing people to facilitate that the organizational goal, relevant goals are attained. So according to Warren Bennis, like there are definitely 4 effective characteristics of a leader. Like they provide direction and meaning to the people that they are leading, they generate trust amongst the people, they favor action and risk taking, and they are the purveyors of hope. So, what we were discussing, like we have to show others, like as leaders, people have to show others how to do certain things, and they have to show others not only by saying but doing things, that is leading by examples. Then as leaders they have to generate trust in the followers. So trust, like they are by their side, or they, like whenever they are in need, employees are in need, they can approach the leader for their advice, their guidance, and like the leaders also trust the followers and they believe that they can develop and they trust their competencies. So this level of trust is very important when you're talking of leadership. So again, leaders are people who favor action and risk taking, and they are like, and they are the people who generate hope. They are the people who generates hope among the followers, like okay, they can reach the target and they are able to reach the target. So these are 4 main qualities of leadership according to Warren Bennis. When we are talking of leadership versus management, so leadership is the ability to influence a group towards the achievement of goal. So, and management is the use of authority which is inherent in the position that the person is in to direct others and tell them what to do, and that post, the position, the power itself demands compliance from others. So leadership is not directly connected to the post where the person is in, but the managers and his powers are connected to the organizational position, and virtue of that the person demands compliance from others. According to Zalesny, 1977, the difference between managers and leaders is that managers focus attention and energy on how things get done and their role in events that occur or in the decision making process, and leaders are more concerned with ideas and in relating to others with more intuitive, empathetic ways, and what events and decisions mean to people. So if you can understand, like managers maybe is more concerned with like how the process part of it, like how things get done and their roles, and leaders are more concerned with ideas, innovative way of doing things, and relating to people in more empathetic ways, so that they know like how to make decisions and what decisions mean to people. So like managers also plan, organize, direct, control, staffing, delegation, all these things which are part of management functions, and they deal with money, they deal with space, they with facilities, information, etc. And they have subordinates and they communicate, and they while others, leaders, have followers, they inspire others, they encourage creativity and like function, like risk taking on the part of the employees, they encourage them to function properly, they encourage them to innovate. So these parts of like tolerance for errors, these are some of the qualities of a good leader. So, and leading people towards objectives and bringing orders from like analyzing the chaos and bringing orders from the chaos. These are some of the like influencing others so that we can get voluntary commitment from them, like affectional commitment, affective commitment, compliance with hearts. So these are some of the domain where which is defined as leadership as compared to what we understand by managers. So like if you can differentiate again, managers are more related to how to control behavior and ask how and when sort of questions, and leaders are more interested in innovation, focusing on people, finding the potential of the people, trying to develop them so that they can develop and map the organization and map it to the organization's objectives. These are certain things like inspiring people, helping them to realize their own potential, moving them towards the organizational goals in short directed steps, encouraging them to take risks. These are some of the qualities which defines a leader and separates or defines the leader and differentiates it from the that role of a manager. So like taking questioning the status quo and choosing the right way to doing things. These are some of the qualities of like when you talk of leadership. Craig et al. In 1962 identified 14 functions that a leader may take. These functions are divided into task functions and maintenance functions. So the task functions are like executive, coordinating group activities and overseeing the setting of policies and goals; planner, deciding how the group will achieve its goal; policy maker, establishing the policies and goals; expert, which is a source of expert information; external group representative, speaking for the group with others; controller of internal relationship, determining the social structure of the group; purveyor of rewards and punishment, controlling members by punishing and rewarding. These are some of the task functions which helps the group to attain its task. Now, for the group to be maintained as a group, there are other top functions which are classified as maintenance functions. So that the group survives and functions well, these functions are called maintenance functions, which is number one is arbitrator and mediator, resolving disputes in the group; exemplar, like behaving in a way that others should behave; symbol of the group, acting as a symbolic embodiment of the group, its goals and its values; substitute for individual responsibility, relieving individuals of the need and responsibility of personal decisions; ideologist, being the source of beliefs and values; father figure, focus for positive emotional feelings of individuals and the object for identification and transference; and scapegoat, and acting as a target for aggression and hostility, taking the blame on behalf of the group. This function, the scapegoat and the father figure, these two are very important functions of a leader as far as maintenance functions are concerned. All functions are very important, but these two functions, like when you are some, like if you're acting as a father figure, what happens, there is a positive emotional transference between the followers and the leaders. Like the leaders will find very comfort zone, a peace in interacting with the leaders, and the followers will find peace in interacting with the leaders. They can share their views, um, they can approach the leader for getting his or her opinion, and they can identify with the leader. So this function is called the father figure. The function of the scapegoat is that when certain blames come on the group for either for poor performance or for other reasons, then leaders taking the scapegoat role means the leader comes forward to take the blame on himself or herself, and and saves the followers from this experience which may hit their self-esteem. Like if somebody tells some derogatory words or criticism is done to the groups, it may lower the self-esteem of the followers. So in that case, the leader acts as the scapegoat and takes the blame on himself or herself. This is one of the primary functions of leaders as far as group maintenance function is concerned. Now, if we are to understand who is a good leader from the viewpoint of a follower, then we have very certain important points, like it's the organization. So organization is very important, in which organization and also like how far organized the leader is. So that those things are very important. Fearlessness, the leader has to be fearless in nature, so that he or she is able to take risk, and is assertive in nature, able to speak his mind, like stand firm in terms of like when there are uncertainty and turmoils in the group. So person who has a respect for others, for the work of others, and also for others as individuals, like person who leads to interaction with whom leads to satisfaction, then one who promotes the interest of the subordinates, one with whom you can talk with frankness, one who has respect for the individual and who has deep knowledge. These are some of the qualities which, from the viewpoint of the follower, are characteristics of some of a good leader. The various other points are like one who has authority over the things that is being done, or authority to give certain things in the terms of knowledge, rewards, benefits, etc. One who is people oriented, one who has positive personality and who has good communication, who is predictable, who has a great power of tolerance, who is well informed in his own subject matter, can take this, share the knowledge with the expert opinion where people are stuck with, and in whose behavior, attitude, there is a grace in ways of behaving. These are classified as characteristics of a good leader by the follower. And also continuing are a person with nature of understanding. Honesty and transparency is very important, so that people can look up to him for the values concerned with the groups, and give his example as far as questions of transparency are there. One who is accessible in nature, so easily approachable, accessible, with whom you can share your feelings and share your queries related to your task. These types of leaders are called accessible leaders. One who provides opportunities for others to perform, that is also good leadership quality. A leader should be quality should be such that the person is able to develop. The more important functions of leadership today is not only to lead but also to develop leaders. So when you're talking of like providing opportunities, one of the good characteristics of a leader is to provide opportunities for the followers so that they can also blossom, they can also get prepared for the leadership position. Giving guidance to others, to the followers, like what they should be doing and what they should not be doing. And this guidance may not only be restricted to the work at hand, the life in the workplace itself. This may extend, this cordial relationship, this bonding may extend to life outside work also, where the person can share his or her feelings with the leader. And the leader in many cases can act as a counselor to give, tell and give the guidance like what the person should be doing. So that develops a bonding between the follower and the leader. When you are talking again of leadership qualities, willingness to listen, genuineness, and having a power of discretion, like what, like if we have a pool of information and behavior, which is to accept and which is not to accept, which to like maybe more concerned about, which is to be not. These are some of the qualities which, according to the follower, are characteristics of a good leader. There are different approaches to the study of leadership. Uckel in 1989 identified 4 approaches to the study of leadership. Uckel in 1989 identified 4 approaches for studying leadership. The power influence approach attempts to understand leadership effectiveness in terms of amount and type of power possessed by the leader. So, the mechanism of power used by these leaders are authority, coercion, force, influence, and manipulation. So, when we are talking of that power approach, means like what is the authority we have in the workplace? Do we have the do we demand this leadership position? Like we are in this leadership position by coercion. What is the force and how can we influence people? And like whether we can manipulate the relationship between the followers and the leaders. All these define your different ways people use power in organization. Influence can be by the expertise. You can influence people by the knowledge you have, expertise in a particular domain, and this can act as a source of power for the leaders. The behavior approach looks at the actual task performed by leaders. So, these involve evaluating daily activities and the behavioral characteristics of the leader. Trait approach is the personal attributes of leaders, such as the energy, intuition, creativity, etc. The situational approach examines leadership in terms of the relationship with the environmental factors, and this theory is also called contingency factors because the style of leadership changes based on the situational demands. So, leaders' behavior is contingent on the situation. So, these are the 4 approaches to the study of leadership. So, Max Weber defined 3 types of authority. So, authority is what the ability to control legitimately. So, that authority could be legal authority and traditional authority and charismatic authority. When you are talking of charismatic authority, it is by the virtue of your ways of influencing people, your ways of talking, behaving, the ways of communicating. This demands a respect from the others, and that gives you an authority. So, legal authority, traditional authority, and charismatic authority are the 3 types of authority. When we are talking of trait approaches, Stockdale in 1948, he defined the leader is characterized by a strong drive for responsibility and task completion, vigor and persistence in pursuit of goals, venturesomeness and originality in problem solving, drive to exercise initiative in social situations, self confidence and sense of personal identity, willingness to accept consequences of decision and action, readiness to absorb interpersonal stress, willingness to tolerate frustration and delay, ability to influence other person's behavior, capacity to structure social interaction systems to the purpose at hand. So, you can find there's a long list of traits as listed by Stockdale way back in 1948, which are important for a person to qualify as a leader. So, a strong drive for responsibility and task completion, like perseverance, then taking again self confidence, a sense of personal identity, then willingness to take in interpersonal stress, like absorb interpersonal stress, then willingness to tolerate frustration and delay. These are some of the capacity to influence other people's behavior. These are some of the important characteristics of a good leader. Bennis in 1990 defined 4 leadership competencies. So, that is the management of attention through a compelling vision, communicating skills to necessary to transfer a vision of own vision to others, being able to establish trust through the reliability and constancy, and knowing one's skills and employing them effectively. So, these are 4 competencies in the sense. So, you ought to have a vision to be a leader. You have to have a goal and to know how to achieve that goal, what it will lead to, and this vision. Once you have this vision, you need a communication skill to transfer this vision to others, so that others also get to share your vision. So, being able to establish trust with the followers, so that the bonding starts with the leaders and the followers and amongst the followers. So, and knowing where one's strength point lies and employing them effectively, so that the vision is reached. These are the 4 leadership competencies as stated by Bennis. Giblin also in 1990, 4 attribute framework for assessing leadership qualities are resourcefulness, astuteness, compatibility and knowledge. So, these are the 4 qualities. If possessed by someone, that person is called to be a leader. Dylan Schneider in 1992 cited 5 ingredients for leadership. You can see vision and focus is one of the important ingredients of this model. Then person who has some practical values, in the sense values which are helpful in day-to-day functioning, which are achievable with values in day-to-day functioning, awareness and use of time, empowerment and motivation, trying to motivate others and empower others, and objectivity and judgment. So, person who is objective in nature and who has a clear-cut judgment of defining how to do things, like how the alternatives are related to the with the pros and cons and how a solution can be reached, who can use his both head and heart in the decision making process. These are the 5 ingredients for leadership. So according to Dylan Schneider, there are 5 core organizational values like integrity, accountability, diligence, perseverance, and discipline. And leaders, what they do is they derive their power by adopting any of the values, a set of values which are consistent with the values which are deemed to be important by the organization. So these are the 5 ingredients for leadership. Rolf Osterberg in 1987 identified 5 components of awareness which are essential for business leadership. So what are these 5 components? We'll have a look into it. First one is hierarchies based on power are detrimental to personal development and must be eliminated. Number 2 is the manager's role becomes one of coordinating a self-organizing, self-renewing and self-transcending system. That is, here you can see the manager's role may be transforming to a leader's role from being a manager. As we were discussing at the start of this lecture, like when you're talking what is the difference between a leader and manager, you found like manager only controls, but when you are talking of leaders is one who inspires and motivates. So when the manager role becomes one of coordinating a self-organizing, self-renewing and self-transcending system, then the manager's role is getting transformed into that of leadership. Problems are not deferred to higher levels, but they're solved by the workers themselves who have the problems. This is again a good example of empowerment, because workers are well equipped enough to solve the problems when they arise and at the spot without referring it to the higher ups and waiting for suggestions from them. Goal setting is eliminated because it does not encourage exploration and personal development, and the profits are reinvested in the company and not used to support other processes. So in that case you can go for more experiments, innovations and risk taking behavior, because while you are in the risk taking behavior there are some obvious chances of failures, and we have to take care, we have to safeguard those failures also. So its profits are reinvested in the company and not used to support other processes. So these, according to Osterberg, these are the 5 components of awareness essential for good business leadership. Now what could be the problems with trait theories are there? In trait theories, the list of potential trait is endless. So and these traits test scores are not very significant, because these traits act in combination, and what is the effect of single trait on leadership pattern development, we just cannot trace it. So and patterns of effective leader behavior depends mostly on the situation in which this leadership function is performed. So and it traits offer little insight on what the leader actually does on the job. It may tell who is a probable leader, who can become a leader if given a chance, and if the leader is in a proper situation, but it doesn't mean like that person actually gets a scope of showing his leadership abilities, and or the situation is there, and therefore it's not possible, like if you define leadership by traits, that to find out the for leadership effectiveness what the behavior this person has actually performed. So and we do not get insight into it. So these are some of the problems with trait theories. However, though there are certain shortcomings, the approach is not invalid in the sense Kirkpatrick and Locke research findings found that effective leaders do differ from others in drive, motivation, ambition, honesty, integrity, and self confidence. So, now what happens is an interesting model, but how it is not that much effective in predicting leadership potential, because situations have become more complex. Today's business situations have become more complex. Today's it demands different types of leaderships, and the traits could be not coming up singly, but combination of 2-3 different traits, which makes it somewhat difficult for study. So this is like, it remains interesting, but it is not able to like tell about the leadership potential in candidates. So next we move on to one of the leadership style, which is called charismatic leadership, and which has its base in the trait theory of leadership, which suggests that some leaders have a gift of exceptional qualities, a charisma that enables them to motivate followers to outstanding performance. So according to these leadership theory, the followers make attribution of heroic or extraordinary leadership abilities when they observe certain behaviors. So the leader has to have a very attractive quality, good, like a good power of explanation, attractive way of speaking, attractive way of dressing, maybe. So something which draws attention and of the followers, and ways of motivating, setting, giving a very good emotional talk, which like boosts up the energy of the followers. These are some of the qualities of a charismatic leader, and that is where the followers find this leader attractive. So and they try to define this leader as like the heroic leadership style. So these are called charismatic leadership styles. House describes charismatic leaders as those who have charismatic effects on the followers to an unusually high degree. According to the Conger's model, it describes how charisma evolves. Stage 1 is the leader assesses the environment, adapts and formulates a vision of what to do. Stage 2 is leader establishes goals. Stage 3 is leaders work on trust and commitment. And 4, leader becomes role model and motivator. So these are the 4 steps of charismatic leadership. So the third part is when you're talking of leaders who works on trust and commitment, this is where maybe ethical issues come up, because you try to gain other people's confidence and trust. You should be very ethical in nature and not try to use others for your own purposes. So these are some of the areas where leader may differ in their attitudes as far as the relationship with the follower is concerned, like the depth of the trust and whether the trust is misutilized or not. And this could give rise to ethical issues of leadership. So what constitutes charismatic leadership behavior are, like as we are already discussing, just a summary of those. Like It depends on the articulation ability, the way that you speak, the way that you communicate, etc. Affection for the leader, which is the ability to inspire. Third is the ability to inspire. Fourth is the dominating personality and attracting personality, and like need for influence. It's your need to influence someone. So these are some of the qualities which defines like the behavior of the charismatic leaders. The key characteristics of charismatic leaders are vision and articulation. This is expressed as an idealized goal that proposes a future better than the status quo and is able to clarify the importance of the vision in terms that are understandable to others. Personal risk, that person is willing to take personal risk, incur high cost and engage in self-sacrifice to achieve the vision. Environmental sensitivities, they are able to make realistic assessment of the environmental constraints and resources needed to bring out changes. One who is sensitive to follower needs, perceptive of others' abilities and responsive to their needs and feelings, and unconventional ways of behaving, engages in behaviors that are perceived as novel and counter to norms. So these are certain aspects of the characteristics of charismatic leader. So power of articulation, having a vision and translating it to others, and risk taking ability, followers need sense, ability to understand the followers needs, ability to scan the environment and understand the environment, and realizing the constraints in the environment, how like what changes need to be adopted. These are some of the good qualities of charismatic leaders. Behavioral approaches, when you're talking of behavioral approaches, these are job centered and employee centered leadership. Psychologist Carl Lewin, according to him, there are different types of leadership, like the autocratic leaders, laissez-faire group, and democratic group. The autocratic leader groups tended to be quarrelsome and work progressed at a modest rate. When the leader was not present, work came to halt. The laissez-faire group ran haphazardly and work progressed at a slow rate. The democratic groups ran smoothly even when the leader was absent, and the relationship of group members were more friendly. So why this was the difference? Because democratic leaders openly discussed issues with group members and encouraged them to join in making decisions. According to Uris in 1964, like this argues that the effective leaders, it's not bad to be autocratic or laissez-faire or and it's not always good like to be democratic also, but what we can say, like these three methods are fit for certain type of situations, and a good and effective leader is one who does a mix and match of the situation and changes the leadership style accordingly to the needs of the situation. During 1950s, leadership studies were conducted at the Ohio State University and the University of Michigan. So these studies, like the Ohio State leadership studies, resulted in the creation of leader behavior descriptive questionnaire, that is LBDQ, and which is commonly used to assess leadership behavior. Leadership, the Ohio State studies consider two behavioral constructs: consideration and initiating structure. In consideration, those items were indicated that declare a leader's friendliness, supportiveness, and compassion. Initiating structures were the items that indicated the degree of structure that a leader imposed on subordinates, like deadlines, assigned tasks, and you have to follow up and you have to give a feedback, you have to follow standard procedures, etc. So it was found, like in a study, like turnover rate was negatively correlated with correlation and positively correlated with initiating structure, although they emphasize like the non-linearity of the relationship. So, so what we can say, like after a certain level, increased consideration or decreased initiating structure, both are bad. So, and and they have like they have ultimately, in the sense, no effect on the leadership behavior. So turnover rate and grievance rate. So beyond certain critical level, like what we try to tell over here is like too much of consideration is both ways. No consideration and too much of consideration, both are bad, and there has to be balanced approach, both of consideration and initiating structure, if we are to have a good performing group. The University of Michigan leadership studies were a series of correlational studies, and the two leadership styles which are important from here are whether it is job centered or employee centered. So one who is job centered is a close supervision structure and use of coercive techniques, rewards and legitimate power to influence subordinate behavior. One who is employee centered, it involves delegation of authority, helping subordinates satisfy their needs, and creating a supportive working environment. The leader is concerned with follower personal growth and achievement. So again, it has to be a balance. So these are only, if you can understand, these are only classifications, like whether you have to be whether you're task centered or you are like employee centered. But being too much of task centered without being concerned with the employees' needs is also something which is not desirable, and being too much of employee centered so that the task at hand gets neglected, that is also not a desirable state for the organization. What requires to be like a balanced state of a balance of both being employee centered and the task centered. So there are three types of leadership behavior patterns, like relationship oriented, participative leadership, and task leadership. So task oriented behaviors are same as initiating structures in the OU studies, and relationship oriented are similar to consideration construct. So what is the difference is that in OU studies, participative leadership was given a separate category as from the other relationship oriented behaviors. So we can see the four leadership styles as exploitative, authoritative, benevolent, autocratic, participative, and democratic. We see like the different forces, the characteristics, like leadership process, which has no confidence and trust in subordinate, to increasing degree to when you are moving to a system 4, democrat is complete confidence and trust in subordinates. Motivational force for group 1 system is physical security, economic needs, and some use for desire for status. And as we progress towards the right hand side, so it's like full utilization of everything, like economic status, ego, and other major motives arising from the group goals. So having, again, what we're telling, a focus on both. When you're talking of communication, is very little when you're concerned with autocratic, exploitative leaders, and much of communication between individuals and groups when you're talking of a democratic leader. And this is a progressive from very little to much this is a progression that we find as we move from the styles of exploitative leadership to democratic leadership style. When you're talking of interaction in the exploitative style, there is little interaction, and whatever interaction is there, there is always with fear and mistrust. And when you're talking of democratic style, it is a like extensively friendly interaction, and it moves through the two stages of little interaction, and usually with some like fear, and when you're and moderate interaction in the previous two stages of benevolent autocratic and participative leadership style. When you're talking of decision making in exploitative authoritative, it's bulk of decisions at the top level of the organization. When you're in the democratic style, it's decision making which is done throughout the organization, well integrated through the process, and it's provided like linking process which is provided by overlapping groups. Goal setting in the exploitative authoritative group is the orders are issued, and when you're talking of it moves through a stages of orders issued, and but the opportunity to comment may exist in benevolent autocratic. In participative or leadership, we're going for goals are set and orders are issued, and after discussion with subordinates. And in democratic, like the goals itself emerge from the groups and the group's participation. So these are the ways in which like it shows a progression and shows how the followers get involved in the whole process of like deciding for the group. When you're talking of participative leadership, it talks of a leadership style in which participative leaders describe to the degrees to which other people in the group can influence the leader's decision. So the decision is autocratic in nature when the manager seeks no input from the other people. It is consultation decision when he seeks opinions from others but makes the decision alone. The joint decision is where manager and others discuss the problem and make a joint decision. Delegation decision is one where the manager gives others the authority to make the decision, and these are the four types of decision. And Newell pointed out like it's a continuum, it's a degree, rather than putting it into like separate categories. And like participative decision making is more when you're talking of either joint decisions or like delegation of decision. The first studies were conducted by Levin, Lippitt and White in 1939, and it is claimed that participative management results in improved decisions, facilitation of change, and identification of the leadership and high level of achievement, because you can understand when it is a joint decision where people are giving their opinion regarding the decision to be taken, or when they are taking the decision on behalf of the leader, they are totally involved in the process of decision making, and they know the process of decisions and know the alternatives, know the solutions. That's why this is an improved, this leads to improved decision making and facilitates change, because they are involved in the process. The people about whom the decisions are taken are, when they are involved in the process of decision making, this makes change more easily acceptable, because those changes will affect them and they have to react to the changes and adjust with it. So when they are involved in the decision making process, acceptance of the decision and facilitation of the change happens. So sometimes participative leadership works and sometimes it doesn't. Like when there's a situation of emergency and some lots of uncertainty is there, when the followers themselves are not developed enough to make mature decisions, in those cases participative leadership is not something which is possible, and maybe the leader has to take some benevolent autocratic decisions and not allow or go for participations in situations of emergency, and when the followers are not mature enough or time is a constraint, we have to take these factors into consideration to find out whether participative leadership is the answer for the situation that we are in. So, though these two studies have focused on the leadership behavior pattern, but they have not shown what is the performance, satisfaction, efficiency outcome with these leadership styles. The managerial greed and the Blake and Morton, they have given two behavioral dimensions. That is, one is the concern for people and the other is the concern for production. So in one axis, concern for production is given, and the other axis, concern for people, is given. It is divided into 9 grids, 9 points in both ways, and we get different leadership styles, like country club leadership, which is more high people and low production orientation. So this is more concerned with the needs and feelings of the team members. So they feel like as long as team members are happy, they will be performing more. So it's very relaxed and fun-filled environment, but in that case production may suffer due to lack of direction and control. Produce or perish leadership is very high production oriented, low people oriented. In that case there could be a stress amongst the people, like because they are always target oriented, maybe there is no fun environment. So there are strict work rules, policies and procedures, and we use punishment as the most effective means to motivate employees. Impoverished leadership, this low production and low people, so it is most ineffective leadership style. Middle of the road is middle production, medium people, who takes like it's a balance between the two competing concerns. So now it may appear to be the ideal compromise, but you don't know, like neither production or nor people needs are fully met. So in some cases these people have to settle for average performance. The best is the leadership style which is team leadership, which is high production, high people oriented. So they treat both the production needs and the needs of the people equally high. So when the people understand the organization's goal and that is related with their own goal, so they can understand, like by reaching the organization goal only their own goals can be fulfilled. So organization's success, and then they participate in the organization's success, and then by being a part of that success they also get recognition and they can fulfill their personal dreams. So their needs and the organizational goals coincide, and that's how there is a complete blend of these two needs, like for high production orientation and high people orientation. So it is a mutual environment which is based on trust, respect, and which leads to high performance and motivation, inspiration, and as a result which leads to high production. So we end over here and for this, and we'll continue in the next lecture with other leadership styles which are present, and find out like what are the different constraints in terms of when we're discussing contingency leadership, what are the situational factors which may act as a constraint and where people have to change their leadership styles. Should one style be always followed, or same leader can follow different styles according to the situations. We'll go through these discussions in the next 2 subsequent lectures. Thank you.